Welcome to this session. It's on food price spikes. The program did also mention financial crises, but we thought that was taking on the world, so we've narrowed it down to just looking at food price spikes, and in particular the international price spikes that we've had of recent times for this session. My name's Kim Anderson. I'm on the Board of Trustees here for IFPRI. We have as you see, 3 speakers plus a rapporteur, a speaker from Peru, from the Philippines and from Vietnam. Let me just briefly lay out 3 key facts to make sure we're on the same page before we start. The first is that food prices in real terms over the 20th century were in a long-term decline, and there's always fluctuations around them, but the trend was falling at about 0.5% per year, or from 1950 at about 1% a year. Since the turn of this century, though, we've had 3 price spikes, and the average level of prices in the last half dozen years has been 50% above what it was in the previous 25 years. You can see that especially for cereals, with those 3 price spikes there, having had a fairly flat period prior to that for these prices in international markets. The third fact is that these food prices in international markets are now more closely correlated with fossil fuel prices. So if your country is a net food importer and a net importer of energy products, you're getting a double whammy to your terms of trade in these recent years because those prices are moving together. And of course, one of the reasons they're moving together has to do with biofuel policies, which no doubt will get some mention here today. If you like US dollar prices, there they are, the dollars per barrel on the bottom there for petroleum, and the wheat and maize per tonne prices. So there are some analytical questions we can ask today. Why are these international prices higher in these recent times? Is this the new norm? And are biofuel policies to blame for this high level of prices as distinct from fluctuations around them? And then will these food prices continue to be more volatile into the future? People say that climate change is going to generate more supply instability, and that may happen. In addition, there was a very low stocks to use ratio for grains around 2007-8, and people like Brian Wright say that was a major reason for that first price spike in 2008. Those stocks have rebuilt a bit in recent times, so that might give you cause for thinking perhaps this was just a one-off situation. Another issue is how closely domestic food prices are moving as these international prices are moving. Many countries have trade costs that make their domestic prices divorced from international prices. Other countries have governmental trade barriers that insulate their domestic market. And if those governmental barriers had been altered at a time of spiking international prices, that has contributed to that spike and made it more difficult for countries that are trying to remain open. And a subsidiary question about those policy responses that we've had in recent times is, have they in fact, as they have been reputed to have done, reduced the extent to which people have been pushed into poverty? So these are some of the analytical questions we can be focusing on. And as for policy questions, in trying to strengthen resilience, we're going to look at it from the global food system point of view, looking at ways to reduce those food price fluctuations around trend, and hopefully around a lower trend if you're thinking of this from the point of view of net buyers of food. And so we could look at what roles the WTO can play, for example, what roles climate-smart agricultural R&D could play. A second set of policy questions relates to what's happening at the regional level, and there's been lots of discussion since 2008 about the role that regional public stocks could play, and one always asks the question when that gets raised as to the extent to which that might crowd out private stock holding. And if the government doesn't do the job very well, it becomes an expensive process that might make things worse rather than better, but it's an open question. And a third set of policy questions relates to what could be done at the national level. What could we do to improve markets domestically? What could we do to lower trade costs internally in countries? What role will social safety nets, conditional cash transfers and so on play? So that's some of the things we'll look at in this session. And our first speaker is Maximo Torero, who runs the division that is focused on markets, institutions and policies at IFPRI. So Maximo, the floor is yours.